Hello, welcome to the Advocate Extraordinaire Patient Strategy Training for the FDA Development Workshop for Chronic Fatigue Syndrome and ME. My name is Lori Chapo-Kroger, and I am a patient and also president of PANDORA organization. We have offered Advocate Extraordinaire training before in person, but now with new technology, we're able to offer it to you. Originally, this training session was recorded with Denise Lopez Majano. She is a mother of two sons who have ME, and she's also the founder of Speak Up About Me. This presentation has two segments. We're going to look at what the FDA Development Workshop looks like, and then we are also going to go through some of the strategies. The FDA says that this is the development of safe and effective drug therapies for chronic fatigue syndrome and myalgic encephalomyelitis. It's going to happen on April 25th and April 26th at the Bethesda Marriott on Pooks Hill Road. The workshop will include a patient perspective day and also a scientific day. This is part of the patient-focused drug development initiative, and this is being done for 20 disease areas, and ME-CFS is the very first one. And what this does, it heightens our exposure and our visibility. And the purpose is to discuss how best to facilitate and expedite the development of safe and effective drug therapies to treat signs and symptoms related to chronic fatigue syndrome and myalgic encephalomyelitis. And what we're hoping this achieves is to attract pharma to invest in our disease. We want to heighten our key issues. We want to show that there are validated biomarkers and outcome measures and ensure pharma and FDA understands the nature and severity of disease from a patient perspective. Right now, we don't have any validated biomarkers from the FDA, but we want to show that there's possibility for that to happen. So excuse me on that part. It's also going to give a patient's perspective of risk benefit to improve drug development. And what this is that a patient who is in bed most of the time has a different perspective on what risk they're willing to take in taking a drug compared to somebody who is maybe working part-time. And your role is going to give comments that will inform FDA and attract laboratories and drug companies to do research in our disease. And we're going to give you some tips on how to maximize your public comments and even your written comments. Day one is the patient perspective day. We're going to tell them about the disease severity and impact on quality of life. And again, the risk we're willing to take compared to possible benefit, and the experiences with current treatment options. And because there are no FDA approved treatments, we have an unmet medical need. And this is really going to puts us in a unique position to provide this perspective. It's the first time anybody has asked us for our opinion. FDA, pharmaceutical companies, and laboratories will be at this meeting and will be listening. So we need to speak their language and give them information that will pique their interest. And this day one is going to provide critical insight for the scientific days on day two. Day two on April 26th will consist of 4 panels, and the first two is looking at the regulatory and drug development initiative for chronic fatigue syndrome. And then on panel 2, we'll look at key symptoms of chronic fatigue syndrome and ME. So that'll be looking at signs and symptoms, outcome measures, and disease heterogeneity. They will also look at the lessons learned from previous studies and the role of repurposing. Um, Pharmaceutical companies have large libraries of potential drugs and drugs they already have on the market. And so this will help them understand where they could possibly repurpose those. Then also on day 2 will be panel 3 and panel 4. They'll look at the clinical trial endpoints and design, outcome measures to assess efficacy, and potential valid endpoint measures of symptom improvement. And then they're going to take everything that has happened in the day and a half and look at the key messages, the scientific gaps, and the possible next steps. What we want to do is help pharma understand and help them connect the dots. We want them to see our signs and symptoms and connect them to our test abnormalities, and then those abnormalities to the treatments we have tried to try to correct those problems, and if we had any symptom changes. And the FDA has not asked us about test abnormalities that we have had or lab abnormalities, but based on advice from a researcher and also from a drug developer, this is really the best strategy to try to influence the people that are going to be in the room and hopefully invest in our illness. What the FDA does want to know from us is what symptoms does your treatment address? How has treatment changed over time and why? And how well do your current treatments affect your worst symptoms? And have these treatments improved your daily life or your activity? And if your condition has changed, how well do these treatments work? And they also want to know the downside of the treatments. But again, we want to connect our biological abnormalities with our symptoms. And some of the things we might want to talk about is neuro impairment. Look at maybe at sleep dysfunction, headaches, sensory disturbances, and then some of the tests are listed underneath that could look at some of these things. And also our cognitive dysfunction, our impaired memory and process speed, and cognitive performance tests could help tell about if we have abnormalities in those areas. And then the immune dysfunction with cytokines and high viral titers, or your low natural killer cells. But these are some of the test abnormalities here. And what our goal is to get pharma to understand what pathways are not working in our body, because those abnormalities can be used as drug targets. And that's the main purpose that we want to show them, so they can repurpose drugs or even develop new drugs. Some more biological abnormalities would be autonomic dysfunction, which would be like orthostatic intolerance, where you feel dizzy, lightheaded, you have your racing heart, weakness and sick feeling when you're standing for a long period of time, or even walking for a long period of time. And tilt table tests and orthostatic blood pressure tests and blood volume tests can detect autonomic dysfunction or orthostatic intolerance. And then, of course, the post-exertional malaise, where you relapse after any mental or physical activity. And applications such as Fitbit can be used for measurements, because there will also be industry there that designs devices And Fitbit is one of those that can measure for outcome measures. And it's a device that you wear, and then your doctor can gather data from it. It's also available on iPhone and I think on some smartphones. And what it does, it measures how many steps you take in a day. The device that you wear that is not on the iPhone also can measure the quality of sleep. And let's look at autonomic dysfunction. If you have the orthostatic intolerance and you can't be up walking around much during the day, you literally have to be flat most of the time, and your doctor puts you on a beta blocker and gives you this Fitbit device and discovers that now all of a sudden you can take 300 more steps or 500 more steps in a day, that is a measurable outcome and tells how effective the treatment is, or the drug therapy is. So here's a hypothetical example of what you might say. When my Epstein-Barr virus and HHV6 viral titers are high, I have cytokine storm, orthostatic intolerance, and impaired memory. And this leaves me so I can't get out of bed without using an assistive device, and I can't remember words to write emails. When I take my Valcyte, my Epstein-Barr virus and HHV6 viral titers are lower, and my memory and fatigue is improved, but I still have the orthostatic intolerance. And some of your abnormal labs might include low natural killer cell function, low T cell count, low VO2 max, and elevated cytokines. What pharma is not going to take into account are these things listed on the screen. And what we will do is we will be defining the disease by telling what our abnormalities are. They will learn from that biological basis of disease and kind of connect those dots from our symptoms to abnormalities to treatments, like in that one slide. And remember that pharma is a business, and they want to know what information that they can use so that they can sell basically their products to. Okay, these are some of the recommended don'ts. At this meeting, it is better to be scientific, but not overly specific with lab values. Simply, you can say, I have high inflammatory cytokines, and not list all the individual ones like your interleukin 6 or interleukin 10. Avoid using the word biomarker. Instead, use the word abnormality. The FDA has a different definition of biomarker than what we're used to. So we don't want to use that word. In this setting, it's better to use the word abnormality. For the public testimony, if you're going in person, we heard that there are many people who has signed up to be there, and our time might be cut short. And so it's best to write a 3-minute testimony and a 2-minute testimony, just to give yourself some leeway there. And so what you should do is really state your important point first, because if you get cut off, your important point was stated. And then you again use the plain language. You could say something like, my test shows my natural killer count is abnormal, or because of my orthostatic intolerance, my doctor gave me a tilt table test, which was positive. And then again, I want to also mention, if you haven't had any of the testing that was on that one slide, or those 2 slides about the lab abnormalities or test abnormalities, I think it's important to state why. Maybe your doctor hasn't ordered them, or that your insurance company wouldn't pay for them. Giving comments both in person and also written, it brings the patient perspective into the drug development and approval process. And if you're there in person, it really does put a face to the disease. It makes it real for the people in the room. Right now, advocates are working together and we're working smarter, and we are getting information from drug developers and also from researchers on how to best strategize for this meeting. And because we're doing this and because we are allowed to give public comment, it's very I can't say that word, empowering to give public testimony. The deadlines for the docket, you can still submit written comment up to August 2nd. And the URL is on the screen. They have a form to submit your comment that only accepts 2,000 characters. But you can write one in a Word document and then add it as an attachment. So I want to thank you for your time and thank you for being an advocate extraordinaire. And we are really hoping that this historical meeting does bring about validated treatment options and hopefully one day a cure. Be well.